Hi everyone, this is Greg Hunt. I'm a mediator, a trainer, and host of No Disputing That, a podcast for anyone with an interest in dispute resolution. In this series, I sit down with some of the leading names in the dispute resolution field to discuss mediation, arbitration, and other forms of alternative dispute resolution, which we also call ADR. We may even cover other issues in the law and in life in general. Expect some laughs, some honesty, and quite a few editing errors along the way. Welcome to part 2 of the world of arbitration with myself, Gregory Hunt, and Ben Giaretta. This is the second half of our conversation, and we cover some embarrassing moments we've had at conferences, and we get to know some of Ben's interests a little bit better, and we also hear some absolutely fantastic advice from Ben for young aspiring arbitrators, mediators, lawyers, whatever profession you're in. Actually, the advice applies to all, and actually not even young. As someone in the 50s, I'm going to listen and take the advice as well. Anyway, here's part 2. Hope you enjoy it, and there's more details at the end on how to get in touch. Thank you. Right, let's lighten the mood a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you, I've got a bit of a theme running, and what I'd like to ask you, it's a fun question, and I'll answer it too. What's the most embarrassing thing to you happen to you at a conference or in a work setting that you're able to share? Not.
I don't think to protect the innocent. I can't share anything. What I would do, and this may come across like a bit of a lawyer's answer, but there's probably 2 ways to approach it. In the sense that, I'm constantly doing things at conferences, whatever, which I find embarrassing to myself. Other people may not think they're embarrassing. I mean, for example, just the other day at a conference, I went up to someone. I said, I said, hello, so and so. And I realized I completely got the wrong name. I thought she was someone else entirely, but I couldn't see her name badge. And afterwards, I cringed at that. I thought that was very, very embarrassing myself, but she probably just laughed it off. On the other hand, there are occasions where I do things which I think are perfectly normal, but looking at by other people at the outset, I think it's incredibly embarrassing. And I will give you an example here. I went to the ICA conference in September, and after there was a big dinner on the gala dinner on the Tuesday night, and afterwards I tried to get back to my hotel, but a bunch of much younger attendees dragged me off to first to some bar and then to another bar which had dancing in it, and I was persuaded to dance.
Oh, no.
and having drunk a fair bit, and I thought it was perfectly normal, but perfectly fine for me to be dancing. But obviously, I can well imagine that the onlookers seeing this middle-aged guy but still wearing a suit and doing his dad dancing probably thought it was the most embarrassing thing ever. But of course,
there's no video evidence, is there?
Sorry?
There's no video evidence, is there?
I sincerely hope not. But of course,
if anyone's listening who's got video evidence, please feel free, to send it in.
Yeah.
I think that's I can imagine that would be embarrassing. And if I was in that scenario, my dancing is absolutely shocking. And wouldn't go down well. I've got so many embarrassing things from over the years. So I'll keep my one institute themed. And it goes back to 1995, and it was my first year. I started at the institute in October 95. So it was probably about November time, maybe even, it could have even been December. It might have been a Christmas lunch. And the Secretary General at the time, which was what they were called, was Kerry Harding. I don't know if you ever came across Kerry Harding.
No, I didn't.
Kerry was the as you would call now, Director General. It was the Secretary General. And he said, Greg, I want you to come to lunch with me and an arbitrator I'd like you to meet. And it was my first job, really. I was 25, but I'd done odd jobs before, but it was my first sort of what I would call real sort of London job. And I got taken to this restaurant. It was in Islington. It was up. The institute was at Angel Gate at the time.
Okay.
And we went to this restaurant and sat down, and it was all nicely laid out. And they asked me if I wanted an aperitif. I didn't have a clue what an aperitif was.
Yeah.
So I looked at Kerry, and Kerry ordered a white wine, I think. So I had the same as Kerry. And then we're sitting there, and on the table, there was this lovely bowl of chocolate mini eggs. And I thought, yeah, I'll have one of them in a minute. I was eyeing them up. And then starters came, and we had whatever we had for starters. And I thought, I'll have one of the little mini eggs with it as well. So I picked it up. It was on my lips, just about to go into my mouth. And Kerry kicked me under the table and put it down. So I put it down, and then he picked one up, and then he gently tapped it on the side of his plate and started peeling the quail's egg. So here's me about to put a quail's egg with its shell in my mouth to start eating. Luckily averted by Kerry's actions there. So that was quite embarrassing at the time. I've got much worse than that, but I thought I'd see how.
I'm sure you have.
But you'll have to listen to other podcasts. Listen to my other podcast. I told one last week, which was, I think, the most mortified I've ever been in my life, which was to do with a conference I attended in Lisbon. So you'll have to listen out for that one. But that was terrible.
Okay. There's a whole thing here about putting yourself out there. I mean, I say to junior lawyers that we exist in conferences as a community. We exist in events where we get together. The whole business of arbitration, mediation, whatever, when you're not dealing with clients themselves, is about engaging with other people in the community. And and people often, junior lawyers, just think the idea of going up to someone at a conference is mortifying and very, very embarrassing. But you just got to go with it, and you will embarrass yourself by eating the quail's eggs or whatever, or by the terrible dancing. But you just got to go with it. I mean, you're not going to do something that's going to be that bad. And most of the time, most people will just ignore it. And even though it feels very, very embarrassing to you, you just got to go with it and be brave and reach out. Exactly.
If I ever find myself in a situation with a quail's egg again, I'll know what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Take it on board. And
I don't think I've learned about my dancing though.
No, that's probably a mistake that keeps coming back, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to move on now. So, away from work. What are your passions away from work? What's a little bit about what sort of makes you tick outside of being an arbitrator?
I do know. I think I probably should have even more. I've got a neighbour of mine who has so many hobbies. I look at what I do, and I don't really do that much. But I mean, I am a great film buff, and I can. I've got two daughters. My youngest daughter sent me some quiz which involves naming films from just seeing one frame of a film, and I am pretty good at that. I am very good at identifying films, and I'm very good at of all eras. And I do enjoy going to watch films of all eras. So I can't say I know a huge amount about film theory, but I do just know about films.
I tell you that my favourite line from a film. Then see if you can guess this film.
Okay.
It's got a swear word in, so I'm going to beep.
Yeah.
Right, you ready?
Yeah.
Does it sound like I'm ordering a beep pizza?
I don't know what that is.
It's Die Hard.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He's on the roof shooting down a helicopter or something. He's on the phone to the police. And does it sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother, yes.
Yeah, that one. It's that film, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your favourite film then?
Oh, well, that's a very, very difficult question to answer because probably there's no one particular film.
No, it depends on the mood, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. I mean, there are films which mean a lot to you at a particular point in time. I mean, in terms of recent films, I really enjoyed Top Gun Maverick. I thought that was a fantastic film.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
But if you look further back in time, further back in my life, I mean, I remember it's a film called My Darling Clementine, which is from 1940s with Henry Fonda, which is a fantastic film about the the Gunfight at the OK Corral. There are films that I recall very fondly from the 1950s and 96. I was around the films made at that time, which I've watched subsequently. Actually, the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking a lot of these are westerns. My dad used to watch
sounds like
westerns. So The Searchers from the 1950s, for example. That's a great film. And Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid from the 60s. These are all westerns. But I do like watching other films too. So I mean, a huge range of things. Some films I enjoy so much that actually when I see them on TV, I can't watch them because I know them too well.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I find that a bit stressful. It's like I'm a bit like that with Back to the Future. I absolutely love Back to the Future, but if it's on, I don't watch it because it stresses me out a bit. It's like, it's weird. It's just something. It's like no, I can't watch it because I love it too much.
There's a film called Atomic Blonde, which was made by Charlize Theron. Only from a few years ago, and it's been on TV loads of times. It was on TV the other day, and I was trying to start to turn it on, and I thought, there's no point in me watching this. I've watched it so many times. I know so well. I know what's going to come next. So there's really no point in watching it.
Yeah, and there's films as well that if they're on, I don't know. My kids are probably older than yours, and there'll be like the Bourne films. I love the Jason Bourne films. But I don't want to watch them on my own. I want them to watch them with me. Otherwise, there's no point. So it's like they're on all the time, and I think, I'll tape that, and then the kids will watch it with me, and then they don't want to watch it with me. So I end up not watching it. Right, I've got one more question for you. Well, two actually, but one specifically.
Okay.
If someone is listening to this who is a young up and coming arbitrator, what's the best advice you can give them?
That's, I mean, we could have a whole podcast just about that. I think that absolutely the best advice is just to get out there and engage with other people in the industry. And when I say get out there, I mean go to things and speak to them face to face. Obviously, doing stuff on social media or on sending out things on the internet and blogs or whatever, they have value to them. It's the sort of thing I do all the time, so I wouldn't do it if I didn't think there was value. But the real value comes from getting out there and engaging with people, and take a chance as well. Actually, not only in terms of engaging with people, but also generally, if an opportunity comes up, take a chance and see where it leads you.
Yeah.
You never know where the opportunities will take you, and I've always lived by that. I say, well, I'll give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah,
I know that's
so very important.
It's a very general piece of advice, and I could be more specific, but
it's a good piece of advice, and I think as someone who I think there's a period since I've set up my own business where I've not been networking enough. And I've not been going to those places enough and seeing people enough. And I think having not done that maybe over the last 6 or 7 years as much as I should have been doing, I would definitely recommend the same to anyone. You know, if you're trying to sort of make a name for yourself in a particular industry, it doesn't have to be arbitration. It could be mediation, adjudication, or the law, or anything. Let people know you exist. You know, because if they don't know, and I always say to newly qualified, when someone finishes my mediator training course and they say, well, what do I do now? It's like, well, make sure you let people know that you're a mediator. How are you ever going to get an appointment as a mediator if your LinkedIn profile doesn't say that you're a mediator? You know, so it's about getting out there, like you say, letting people know you exist, letting people know what you do, getting on with people and speaking to them.
And speaking to them.
You never know what's around the corner.
Absolutely. Tell me, I mean, obviously, you still need to earn a living and you still need to do some work and whatever. So not do it all the time, but you should do it more than you probably are thinking on doing. Tell you a story. I told a story when I was earlier a junior person at Ashes. I've told there was the senior partner way back when. I mean, talking about the 1950s and 1960s here. The senior partner of Ashes, Morris Crisp in those days. his mode of operation was he would turn up for work in the morning, he'd spend a few hours working on whatever it was, then he would get into his car, his chauffeur-driven Bentley in those days, drive round to some client's office, have a big lunch with the client, which would involve lots of alcohol, and go on all afternoon, and then he'd go home. And that was his working pattern. And so on the face of it, by modern standards, he did virtually no work. But actually, he was the most well-connected and almost the most successful lawyer in the city, because he knew everyone. He also didn't just know them, but he to say hello to, but he actually engaged with them in a big way, and they knew him as well. So that level of engagement you need. I also remember there's one of these marketing piece of advice or marketing books, can't remember where I've read it, but saying that in order for there to be any real engagement or any real purchasing of someone's services, you need the service provider needs to have at least, I think it's 8 touch points with the person buying. When I mean touch points, I mean in the sense of meeting them at conferences, meeting them at emailing them, having lunch with them, that sort of thing. And the point of that is that no one ever buys anything off you when they meet you for the first time. I mean, it's not enough simply to say, well, I met so and so at a conference, therefore they're going to appoint me as an arbitrator or a mediator, or they're going to give me some work or whatever. It doesn't work like that. You've got to meet them again, and it's only after 8 of those engagements, and it may not be 8, I may be misremembering. It's something like that, 7, 9, or 10, whatever it is. It's only after multiple engagements that they will get to the point where they actually know who you are and trust you and will give you something. So it's not just about engaging, but it's about re-engaging and re-engaging again.
It's great advice to give. Okay, I've got one question, and it's a risky one for me, because I'm going to ask you now: is there anything that you wish I'd asked you that I hadn't, or that you want to ask me?
Well, I mean, we could again go on for a long time just on the other questions. I think I mean, it'd be great to hear from you. Let me tell you. So I'm gonna answer that with a question. I'm going to answer it by way of another piece of advice. But what you just said has reminded me of this piece of advice, which is, when you go to a conference and you meet someone at a conference, you should aim to speak less about yourself and more about the other person. By which I mean, there's a natural tendency when you meet someone at a conference to tell them all about yourself. Say, oh, I'm an arbitrator, I did this and that, I whatever. I mean, most of the time, the person you're speaking to will just completely forget about it afterwards, and there won't really be real engagement. Whereas if you go to a conference, you meet someone and you ask them about themselves, they're much more likely to engage with you, much more likely to remember you if you've got them talking about yourselves. Obviously, you're not there to be an investigative reporter or anything. You're not there to question every person you meet. You have to have a proper conversation. But I always find, when I meet people at conferences, I often meet people who have seen my profile online or whatever, and then they want to come and talk to me about that, LinkedIn or whatever. My response is usually, well, thank you very much for that, but tell me about yourself. I've met so many interesting people at conferences, at events, at arbitration things across the world, that I find it far more value to speak to them and find out about them than speaking about myself. It doesn't answer your question at all, but just yet another piece of advice. But I say that because you said, what should I ask about you? I mean, I'd be really happy to spend another hour just asking you about your experiences and your hopes and aspirations, that sort of thing, because that to me is actually more interesting than talking about myself. So it's very
very nice point, but That's not going to happen. No, and tell you what, it might happen one day. But obviously, the idea of this podcast is we get to know you better.
Yeah. When I set up my own podcast, I'll have you as guests on my podcast.
Yeah. No, it'd be good. I think what you were just saying though before that is really important. Taking an interest in other people.
Yeah.
And not making it just look like you're going through some sort of like tick box exercise of
absolutely.
And I was out with my eldest son a few months ago, and he was buying a kebab. At Billericay train station, there's a kebab shop.
Yeah.
And, like a van. And I heard him say something, and I thought it was such a good way he put it. He said to the man who was selling him the kebab, and it was like 2 a.m, and he'd had a drink and all the rest of it. And he said, "So what's your journey?"
Yeah.
And he was taking an interest. He wanted to know what the man who was selling the kebab did, like not just selling kebabs at 4 o'clock in the morning, but what's his journey? How's he ended up here? What's he done in his life? And I sat there and I stood there and I was just listening to him for about 10 minutes talking to this man. And I thought, at the time he was about 21, and I thought, God, that's so good. The way you just asked that one question and this fella's opened up to you, and now you know basically his whole life story. And it was a good way of getting information out of people, I think.
Absolutely. And it's very admirable of your son to be that engaged with people, especially 2 a.m. But at a level of engagement and to have a real interest in other people. I mean, you do see so many people, not only within arbitration mediation, but at all walks of life, who are very self-centered, not necessarily selfish, because that all has all sorts of connotations with it, but not really having a proper awareness to engage with other people, being so bound up in their own concerns, their own lives, they don't really engage or don't really have enough interest in other people. And that's so important, both in arbitration, mediation, and in other walks of life.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, I've failed again. I said to you I was going to try and keep it to 20 minutes, and I think we've gone on for considerably longer than that. So I'm going to have to wrap up. Thank you so much. I found that really interesting.
Welcome. I've enjoyed it as well.
Good. Thank you. I hope you do when you hear it back. Can you give anyone who's good enough to listen an easy way to contact you if they wanted to get in touch?
Well, there are many ways to contact me. I mean, my firm, Fox Williams, has all my details on our website. My email address is bgiaretta@foxwilliams.com. But I'm also always on social media, LinkedIn in particular, so people can always find me on that and send me messages on that.
Brilliant. And likewise, if anyone wants to get in touch with Ben, you can contact me, and I'll let Ben know, and we can do that way as well. So thank you very much, Ben, for being my guest today.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to meeting you again in person. And maybe we'll have a drink. And to everybody listening, I'll see you next time on No Disputing That. Thank you for listening to No Disputing That. Please subscribe to hear more from experts in the field. If you'd like to suggest any future areas for discussion or to appear on the show yourself, you can follow us on Twitter at No Disputing That and send us a DM. Finally, if you need a mediator, give my management team at Arbitration International a call on 020 7936 7070 or email info@arbitra.co.uk. See you next time on No Disputing That.